Hello, everyone, and welcome to Virtual JNUC 2022. This is our Chrome browser cloud management session, and we're so excited that you've joined us. Jamf customers deploy Google Chrome at an incredible rate within their organizations. And in this session, we're going to hear both from the Google Chrome enterprise team and a large school district that's not just deploying Chrome, but is leveraging some of these best practices for a positive user experience and a more secure environment. So with that, I'd like to have Alex and Matt introduce yourself. Thanks for joining us, guys.
Thanks for having us, Sam. Hi, everyone. My name is Alex Bauer. I'm a Chrome browser enterprise customer engineer. I work with various enterprise customers worldwide, and I help them onboard Chrome into their environment. I help them teach best practices about how to manage Chrome and anything that deals with Chrome. I also work with our engineering teams and help uh, work through feature requests for our customers and kind of help them prioritize various features as they need to, depending on what our customers request. In a nutshell, I pretty much help spread the gospel of Chrome to our enterprise customers.
Awesome. I'm Matt Green. I'm the Systems Integration Coordinator for Lubbock Cooper ISD. Worked for Lubbock Cooper for 8 years and have had the pleasure to manage our Apple environment for the last 7 years. And so we've seen a lot through the years, through class sets and on up to one-to-one where we're at right now. And I just want to give a shout out to Jamf and to Google for letting me just kind of share our story and how we've used Jamf products, as well as Google, specifically Google Chrome along the way.
So let's talk about Chrome Browser Cloud Management. What is Chrome Browser Cloud Management? It is our cloud managed browser management solution that allows you to manage Chrome from anywhere in the world as long as your machines are connected to the internet. It is our platform agnostic solution because it allows you to manage every single desktop and mobile solution platform that you would want to use in your environment, including macOS, iOS, Chrome OS Flex, which just recently got released, Windows, Linux, and Android. So it's from a browser management solution, it's the one tool to rule them all, right? It allows you to set up a unified policy and then deploy that policy on all of your devices without having to reconfigure that policy for each platform individually. The current focus for it is security and user experience. We want to make it super easy for the administrator to push policies as well as get some of the data reporting back into the console. Straightforward, no software that needs to be deployed, no additional third-party tools or anything like that. And then the best part about this whole solution is that it's complementary. We don't charge anything for it. We don't plan on charging anything for it. It's part of the Google Admin Console. So if you are a Google shop, you already have that. If you're not a Google shop, you can sign up now using that QR code that you can see in here. Or you can contact us and we'll help you onboard through the system. But literally, if you have 5 million browsers in your environment and you want to manage them through our management console, there will never be any charge involved with using the tool.
All right, so just a little bit about Lubbock Cooper ISD and our environment and how we use Chrome. We are one-to-one pre-K through 12. All of our students have iPads. We've got about 8,000 students and growing. In fact, Lubbock Cooper was top 5 in Texas over the last few years as far as enrollment. So our enrollment has grown exponentially. We've got about 1,200 staff, 1,200 Macs. We're nearing about 10,000 iPads as all of our staff have both a Mac and an iPad. We've got 650 Apple TVs in our district. We have Apple TVs in every single classroom. So we're very, very much an Apple environment. We use Jamf Pro, Jamf Connect, and Jamf Protect, as well as we are a Google Workspace environment and leveraging now the managed browser from Chrome. So just a little bit about why Chrome is the browser of choice for Lubbock Cooper. Like I mentioned, we're a Google Workspace for education environment. Google Classroom is our primary LMS. It's what our teachers absolutely prefer, and they're very, very proficient at it. Our teachers do a great job as far as learning or using the Chrome browser and Google Workspace in our learning environment. And also, just from an IT perspective, has the ability to be a managed browser, which is a big thing for us because that introduces a lot more browser security that we can apply to the Chrome browser that I'm going to be talking about a little bit later in future slides. So, and like I said, it's the preferred browser for both Mac and iPad. So if I'm looking at a staff device or I'm looking at a student device, it almost always has Chrome, and now it will also have a managed browser.
So some important features of Chrome Browser Cloud Management. When integrated with Jamf, it's a zero-touch browser enrollment. We've worked closely with Jamf to make sure that it's super straightforward, especially from the macOS platform. There's a profile built into the Jamf console. You just copy the enrollment token and you're off to the races. The focus on it specifically is the policy management. As I mentioned earlier, we want to make it super easy and straightforward for administrators to push policies onto the browsers and not have to deal with like manage preferences, or if you're dealing with other platforms, group policy templates and things like that. A lot of customers I talk to, they forget to update those templates, or they just have a really hard time dealing with managed preferences, and this just makes it so much easier for them. We also offer a rich inventory reporting of the browser. We report extensions on the browsers. We report the versions. We report how many profiles are located or configured for the browser. We also report for you like which channel the browser is part of. If you have multiple installations of Chrome, all of those are reported as well, and where the browser is located. So I know it doesn't quite apply as much for the Apple platform, but for Windows, if you have Chrome installed on other locations other than program files, that's also captured, and it could be useful to understand whether it's an admin installation or a non-admin installation. We also make extension management super straightforward. It's easy to add extensions from the Chrome store. We also have extension request workflow that allows for users to very easily request the extensions to be approved. We also have the concept of remote commands, which helps you clear the browser data remotely with just the click of a button. You don't have to remote into the machines or deal with any of that. And it also allows you to enable other Google features such as Beyond Corp Enterprise, which gives you additional security controls into the browser such as DLP and Zero Trust Network Access. It's literally going to be our gateway for a lot of other things that we're going to be doing into our product, into a Google product. So browser enrollment, as I mentioned earlier, the enrollment is done through an enrollment token. We support all of that through Jamf for iOS, iPadOS, and macOS. For iOS and iPadOS, it's a app config parameter. It's super straightforward to do that through Jamf. So you just add the app config parameter as part of the assignment, and you're good to go. And for macOS, as I mentioned earlier, it's just a simple profile as part of the application and custom settings repository. We are now part of the dropdown in the repository for Jamf, and just paste the enrollment token, and you're good to go. The enrollment token corresponds to an organizational unit in our admin console. So what that means is that you have one enrollment token that you deploy to as many devices as you want to, and then once if you really want to move machines from one organizational unit to the other, you can move that through the admin console or via APIs. So we don't lock you down in a certain configuration once you enroll the browser into the console, right? The enrollment token allows you to just get into the console, and then after that, you can use APIs or the console to move the browsers where you need to if the use case changes for those machines. So this is a quick preview of the admin console. As you can see in here, I want to enroll some browsers into my Mac devices OU, and it's super straightforward to generate the enrollment token to configure the profile in Jamf. I choose the Mac devices OU. I click on the plus button on the bottom right, and this generates a token. And that token, now I just copy paste it into the Jamf console in the profile, and I am good to go. So it's very easy to use from an admin perspective.
And this is kind of just an example of how you can use it on an iPad. So this is what an enrollment could look like. As Alex mentioned, it could be a zero touch. It could also be that you deliver Chrome through self-service, however you want to do it. But just looking at zero touch, it goes through the mandatory selections like setup assistant, goes through the device enrollment. Again, you can customize that however you'd like. But then we have our base apps installed. And here in a minute, you're going to see that Chrome is actually installing. And when the user first launches Chrome, we have a configuration from app config that we've grabbed the enrollment token that Alex just talked about, placed that into the app config for the Chrome browser, and now that config is installing itself onto the Chrome browser. So you saw that it was setting it up for our organization. Then from there, we can apply policies such as that they have to sign into a browser and so on and so forth. And I'm going to cover some of those a little bit later in some of the future slides.
So what are Chrome policies? I mentioned those a couple of times earlier. So Chrome policies are any sort of settings that you want to configure on the browser. These could be anything from like proxy settings, cache settings, or cookies. How do you want the browser to handle those? If you want to disable incognito, if you want to configure update policies as well, or update behavior of the browser. Anything that you'd want to configure on the browser is a policy that we are able to deploy through the admin console. So all these settings, as I mentioned earlier, are in the admin console in the settings list. The benefit of this console versus dealing with managed preferences or group policy templates for Windows and all the other stuff is that whenever we release a new policy or a new setting into the browser that is configurable through the console or through enterprise policies, it just shows up in the console for you. So you don't have to worry about updating templates and things like that. It's just there for you day one, and you can just start deploying it into the browser and use it, right? Update policies are also very useful because it allows you to manage the browser and control the version directly from here instead of having to download any sort of APKs or PKGs or MSIs for Windows or whatever it may be for each platform, right? And we also have the capability to force an automatic restart, and that's one of the biggest issues that we've learned from looking at user behavior is users will keep their browser open for as long as they can. So when the browser is staging an update, it doesn't apply it completely until the browser restarts, and because the users never restart the browser, they'll just stay in an older version. So we now have controls in the admin console that allow you to enforce certain timeouts after which the browser is forced to restart if the users haven't done that to apply the update. Another cool thing that we allow you to push through the admin console is the concept of managed corporate bookmarks. So when you're having to deal with various internal URLs that you want your users to be familiarized with, they don't have to memorize them or anything like that. You can just predefine those corporate bookmarks, and then the users just have them available for them. And then those bookmarks get aggregated with the user's private bookmarks. So you don't overwrite any of their data, right? You just give them additional links to whatever might be useful for them, such as IT help desk pages, ServiceNow, or whatever ticketing system you have, any sort of other support pages, or email, Workday, whatever other things you want them to have access to. In here in the console, you can see a quick preview of our policies list. For example, in here, I am configuring a home page and a home button behavior, and then I'm also disabling incognito. You can see how quickly I can do that with just a couple of clicks of a button, and then once I press the save button, those policies apply. We support the concept of inheritance, so any policy that you define at a parent OU or organizational unit gets inherited down the chain, or you can override individual policies at a sub OU. And then you can see in here, you can filter by names, or you can even filter by platform or different sorts of categories and so forth. So it's very user friendly and straightforward to use when dealing with policies.
All right, so some of the Chrome policies that we use at Lubbock Cooper, this applies both to iPad and Mac, but I'm going to be really focusing on the iPad settings or policies that we've applied. So some of the things that we can do, and this is a growing list as we continue to work with this over time, but we can require a browser sign-in like you saw in my zero-touch video a couple slides ago. You can also require a certain pattern of account to sign in. So this basically negates all of the personal accounts that students may use to sign into a Chrome browser, which is huge for us. As well as, like Alex mentioned, remove incognito mode on the iPad, which is something that I don't think you could do until recently, now that you can use app config to manage the browser, as well as pre-configuring in-browser bookmarks, pop-up settings, and safe search settings. So I'm going to dive into those just a little bit and dissect those a little bit. So like I said, you can require a browser sign-in. So something that I want to make very clear with this, with managed Chrome browser on the iPad, is that used to, in Google Admin Console, you had to have users signed into an account in order for certain policies or restrictions to be applied. And since these are now applied at the device level via app config or through registry edits like on Windows or even on Mac, you can require a browser to sign in. And so now I can have my students sign in or staff sign in, but more specifically, I can set that requirement to be a certain pattern of account. Again, this is optional. You don't have to do this, but I really like this in that now our students and staff can't use personal accounts to sign into the Chrome browser if we don't want them to. Another thing that we can do is remove incognito mode. Again, you do this from the device level via the admin console. And so now we've removed incognito mode on the iPad or on the Mac. So now they don't have access to the incognito mode that they may have previously had access to, as well as setting a pre-configured homepage or in-browser bookmarks. So you can see I've set this to our Lubbock Cooper webpage. I can set this to anything. But another thing that's really cool is that a lot of teachers and students use web apps that they may use Google Chrome for. And so sometimes they run into pop-up settings where we need the pop-up blocker turned on or turn off. And so right from Enrollment, we can preset this via the app config that we've got set, or using that Google Admin Console like Alex just demoed. We can turn the pop-up blockers on or off. So this mitigates having to send campus techs around or teach teachers and students how to go through the Google Chrome settings on their device and turn the pop-up blocker on or off. And then another thing that I really like is that we can use safe search settings and just kind of have another layer on top of content filtering. So whether or not content filtering fails, we still have safe search still applied at the device level, which is really, really nice. So and then Alex is going to hop back into Chrome Browser Cloud Management.
So I mentioned earlier that we do capture some data of the browser into our console. We are GDPR compliant. Privacy is very important for us at Google. So we don't touch any of the user's private data. So cookies, passwords, autofill data, and history, none of that. We do capture some of the information that we find very useful for the administrators to make educated decisions on the browser, on how they manage it. So some of the things that we find useful, or our administrators find useful, is the path of the browser and the version. I mentioned earlier that, for example, on Windows, if it's not installed under program files, we capture that specific path. This is very important because then you will know that the user installed Chrome as a non-admin installation. So then you can take actions to mitigate that and move that installation to program files as an admin installation, as it should be. We report all profiles that are deployed in the browser. We do report if the profile is syncing with a Google identity. We find that very important because you want to be able to know whether the user is syncing data to a personal account or a corporate account. And then you can, if you weren't blocking those personal accounts in the past, right? We also tell you which sign-in user is applicable for the OS level as well. So if it's a shared machine, you know who's the last person that used that machine. We report extensively on all the extensions that are installed on the browser. And those extensions could be user installed, they could be admin pushed, or even sideloaded. So if you weren't blocking extension sideloading in the past, you might have a lot of interesting extensions that you might want to block. And so we definitely want you to be able to be aware of those users that break those policies from that perspective. We also give you a full report inventory of all the policies that are installed on the machine and the user policies as well. These policies could be coming from managed preferences, they could be coming from the cloud console, or they could be coming from GPO or Registry on Windows. We don't want to lock you down on one management approach or the other, but when looking at the browser details from the console, you want to be able to very easily understand what experience that user should be having into the browser. Is their incognito mode enabled or not? Is their password manager enabled or not? Do they have a homepage configured or not? And so forth, right? So when you're trying to troubleshoot any sort of configuration issues on the browser or behavior on the browser, you can very easily tell how the browser is configured. So you don't have to remote into the user's machine, and you can very quickly mitigate if there's configuration issues by moving the browser to a different OU if needed, and so forth.
So how we use Chrome inventory at Lubbock Cooper, like Alex just mentioned, is we can use some of the data and analytics that we gather from the Chrome browser in the Google Admin Console through the Chrome inventory and manage policies via OU or via groups, however we so choose. But basically, it helps us in that decision making so that we can better curate a supreme browser experience to our students and to our teachers. It also lets us view recent activity as well as manage browser versions and see browser extensions that are being installed, which is really a big deal. And that doesn't really affect the iPad realm of things yet. But as far as on the Mac side, we want to be able to see some of those extensions that are being installed and that kind of thing. So Alex is going to cover that next.
So I mentioned that we do very extensive extension management in the browser. We allow you various ways to manage those extensions. And so some of those ways that you can do that is through allow and block lists. So you can choose to either allow all extensions and choose what extensions to be blocked. You can choose to block all extensions and choose only what extensions are allowed. You can, choose what extensions you want to force on the browser to be automatically installed. You can also do like a middle ground on that extension management with managing by permission. That allows you to um, block extensions or allow extensions that to be installed in the browser based on what they do in the browser. So if there's any extension that, for example, accesses your location or sets up a proxy on the browser or anything like that, you can block them automatically. So you don't have to play that losing game or a never-ending game of blocking extensions by name, because as you know, extensions get added to the browser on a to the Chrome Web Store on a daily basis, right? And you don't want to have to keep hunting those extensions down. So this gives you a very good middle ground. The other thing that we've recently launched, and it's been pretty successful from feedback from our customers, is the concept of extension workflow. So if you were to block all extensions onto the browser except what's allowed, the challenge that comes into is how do you allow a user to request an extension to be approved to be installed in the corporate browser, right? So instead of having the user go into various IT support pages or call the help desk angrily that they can't install whatever extension they need, they can go to the Chrome Web Store, and instead of seeing add to Chrome, they'll see a button that says request. When you click request, you as the admin get a notification in the admin console, and then you can take action from there. And then the best part about it is that the user gets notified as soon as you approve their request. So then it's very straightforward for them. They just click on the notification and then they're able to install it. So they don't have to keep going through various other systems and mechanisms to just request an extension. So here's a quick preview of the admin console. I have a bunch of extensions that I've already approved for installation. I'm searching for the Chrome Web Store for a new extension such as Screencastify. I'm going to force install it, press save, and then I'm good to go. It's super straightforward once again to add extensions to the list versus copy pasting extension IDs into various policies and having to push all of these profiles for each platform. It can become quite challenging and difficult to keep track of. So this you just apply one time for the OU and then you're done once again. Next thing I want to show you is if I want to block an extension, I can do it very easily. If I have an extension in the list, I just choose the extension and then I click block and then save the settings. Additionally, you can see in here I'm changing the default policy for the browsers to block all extensions. Except what's approved through the extension workflow. And I'm also blocking extensions based on certain permissions, such as a VPN provider and a proxy. And once again, I press save the settings and I'm done. So very easy to use and very straightforward. And of course, because we're on JNUC, of course, we just wanted to block the Windows accounts extension because we want to use Apple accounts and anything Apple related and not Microsoft. So yeah. The next thing that I wanted to show you in here for the demo is the extension workflow. I have a list of extensions that have been requested by users. I'm choosing to allow the installation of a specific extension, and then I choose the organizational unit where I want to allow the installation to be done. So Mac devices for this demo. Once I press save, any machines or users in that enrollment in that organizational unit is able to install that extension. And then those machines that have requested that extension to be approved will get notified that the extension has been approved, and they're able to install it directly from there. So you're not going to be bombarded by countless requests over and over again for the same organizational unit or even child.use if you've already approved it. So once again, super, super straightforward to use and manage.
So extensions of Lubbock Cooper, like Alex was mentioning, without Chrome browser cloud management, extension management is kind of the Wild West. Our staff and our students, if they weren't signed in with their Lubbock Cooper account, or we didn't have restrictions properly applied at the device level, then they can install any kind of extensions that they want on the browser. So that's changing the browser experience. Cybersecurity becomes an issue because some of those extensions may be gathering data privacy issues. Things like that, as well as it's just creating classroom distractions and affecting the student learning environment. So with Chrome browser cloud management, we kind of are able to rein that back in. And basically, like Alex had mentioned, when a user goes to the web store, they can request that extension. It goes through an approval process. We go through the Google Admin console like he showed, and we can approve that extension for the users if we want, or also disapprove that extension. We can also preload some extensions and send those out to a specific OU or to groups or however we want to go about that. So the customizability on this is just kind of endless, and we really, really like that. It's had a positive impact in our environment. And also that brings cybersecurity back to the forefront and puts the student learning environment also as a priority, as it should be.
So a new feature that we recently released and we've gotten, once again, very good feedback from our administrators is the concept of reporting connectors. So we now integrate our admin console with various SIEM providers such as Beyond Chronicle, Google Cloud PubSub, Splunk, and CrowdStrike should be launching very shortly. And it allows you, without deploying any sort of software into the browser, to get audits of any sort of important activity into the browser. One of them is like malware transfer. So if a user downloads any sort of malware or unsafe content, that gets reported and audited and sent automatically to Splunk, for example. Unsafe site visits. So when Google Safe Browsing gets triggered, with that beautiful red page that says, are you sure you want to go to this page? Because we've identified this as malicious content. Do you want to go to this page? So when a user clicks that, you will get a notification or an audit log of that. Additionally, you can use our password reuse and password change functionality and keep track of those. So whenever a user reuses a password, a corporate password for any sort of personal accounts, you can keep track of that as well. Something that's coming out shortly this year, it will be also the concept of password breach. So if a user has a password that's found in a certain hacked or breach that's public on the internet, we can do an audit of that. Any sort of login events, extension events. So when a user installs a certain extension, that gets reported as well. And then we're also working on building a Palo Alto connector for this year as well, which would allow you to send all of these events to your Palo Alto environment. So some of the new features that we have under development for our admin console. We're working on building or offering you the concept of inactive browser deletion. This goes hand in hand with the device token deletion policy. So for example, if you have a machine that's been in a closet or in a drawer for 6 months, and you know that's never going to be used again, right? Or if it's a machine that's been reimaged or just recycled, any of those records from the admin console, you want them to be automatically deleted and purged for us, so you don't muddy up the data with the stale information. That also allows you to automatically delete the unique device token that's assigned to the browser after it enrolls. So if for some weird reason that machine has been deleted from the admin console and it gets brought up 9 months later from that drawer that it's been stored in, that browser gets re-enrolled into the console automatically, and now it's managed again and it reports again into the console. The other thing we're bringing is the Chrome Insights report, which gives you a dashboard with various browsers that might need any sort of actions to be taken on. So, for example, if your machines that are or browsers that are out of date, or browsers that haven't checked in a certain amount of days, or and so forth, you can then figure out what actions you need to take to bring them back into compliance. Legacy Technologies report is also another one we're working on that allows you to report or to be aware of any sort of technologies that we might be deprecating into the browser, and be aware of those, right? And then prepare for them by taking any sort of action that you might need to, such as setting up a new policy, or working with the application owners if you need to modify an application to be compliant with that technology change. So, for example, if we were to deprecate TLS 1.2, we'll notify you that X number of machines are using TLS 1.2 on this application, and then you'll be able to work with the application owner to modify the application to be compliant with that deprecation. We're also bringing the managed profile reporting into the console. So for those customers that are Google Shops that use Google Identity, if you haven't been managing the browser with the token that we've been talking about for the past 30 minutes, and they only sign into the browser with their Google Identity, that profile is now will report into the console, and you'll be able to get the same level of data, such as extensions, policies, and so forth. The only difference is that now you're only reporting on that profile itself and not at the machine level. So you still have control over the profile, but not over the machine. We're improving or overhauling the extension details page and the request workflow to be even more useful and bring you even more data. And together with that, we're trying to come up with a third-party risk assessment card that will help you take a better educated decision around which extensions you want to approve or deny, and so forth. We've recently released the Chrome guides into the admin console that kind of shows you what steps you need to do if you're a new customer to use Chrome Browser Cloud Management. And we're actually overhauling that to make it even better by making it more interactive, and also keeping track of where you are in the process and what actions you've already done as part of the guides, so you don't get lost on what you've done and what you haven't done, right? So it makes it super straightforward for new admins to keep track of what they need to do. It's a very useful also learning tool to be prepared to get familiarized with Chrome Browser Cloud Management. We're also bringing group-based extension assignment, which would allow you to assign extensions on various dynamic groups instead of by organizational units, which then gives you the ultimate flexibility on how you deal with extension assignments. And then many other new features that we're working on that we're wanting to make this solution the best browser management solution out there. So we've talked a lot about Chrome Browser Cloud Management. If there's any interest in getting in touch with us, you can use the QR codes on this page. There's also a link to our support documentation that has all various useful articles and pages that teach you on how to use Chrome Browser Cloud Management and how to use extension workflow and all this other stuff. And then there's also a registration link that helps you sign up for Chrome Browser Cloud Management if this is something you would like to use. Additionally, you can find our email address down below, and you can use that to get in touch with us if you have any questions.
All right. And with that, this really concludes another installment of great resources from Jamf and Google all about the management of Chrome. Hopefully, you've learned a lot today. We got a view of how to sign up for Google Chrome Browser Cloud Management, the capabilities that Matt is able to roll out within his district, and then some resources to get started. If you'd like to learn more about what Jamf and Google offer together, you can go to jamf.com/integrations/Google, and you'll find both of these resources, including our Google Chrome on Apple hardware technical paper that goes a little bit deeper into some of these topics. With that, we want to thank everyone for joining. Thanks for making us a part of your virtual JNUC 2022. And we are in the chat answering questions, but if you are at JNUC in person, we're here as well. So we look forward to hearing from you. Thank you so much, and we'll talk to you soon.